Welcome back to Rockstock Channel. It is February 7th. It's just here, Rodney and me. We're going to do a quick update. Our editor, Josie, is on vacation this week, so I am going to be brushing up on my editing skills in doing this video. Want to remind everyone watching, I've been publishing a bit less my Lithium Bull newsletter, and we are making more videos and we'll be making more videos, but increasingly, we are giving our clients, on Patreon and other paid customers, more of our mind share. We put a lot of information out there for free over many, many years. We will continue to do so, but I would strongly encourage you, if you like this video, you find it valuable, like, subscribe, look us up on Patreon. Rodney and I are hosting regularly kind of one-on-one and group conference calls with our Patreon sponsors, where we share more of than we do in these for free public videos.
I see EV sales forecasts are higher than mine. I'm comfortable that ESS is going to have a big year by the looks of it, above the consensus. I'm feeling more confident, and we've seen prices stabilize in the China spot market and actually tick up in this last week, unless there's some surprise supply. 70 to 80,000 tons of shortage this year.
A major Chinese, lithium producer shared with me, the first thing out of his mouth was ESS, in China. And don't under it, like, it's going gangbusters. And so it's not just Tesla mega packs.
It's huge. And my numbers are, by 2030, are way higher than everyone else's. I think ESS can compound at a much higher rate than EVs, because EVs are going to, at some point, stabilize, and growth's going to probably sort of head back to more like 20% demand growth, whereas ESS can go 50% plus for some time.
The January scoreboards, there was a bit of a January effect. A January effect is, stock prices kind of going up, and in the U.S. capital markets, it was broadly positive in January. A lot of stocks in the EV space, like Tesla and Rivian and QuantumScape, have all performed very well. Lithium as well. We talked about this at the end of last year. We had David Deckelbaum talking about deep lithium value. And, the last 6 weeks of last year, there was a lot of tax loss selling and the like. And I think at the beginning of this year, this January effect might just be a funds flow kind of reallocation, covering of shorts, new inflows into this space. So not necessarily completely fundamentally driven, but the fundamentals of lithium are very strong. The fundamentals of a number of, EV companies are strong, but the scoreboard reflects, it's all green, almost all green, in lithium, with many, many stocks up 20, 30%, in some cases 100, or near 100% in the case of Patriot Battery Metals and Winsome Resources. So the Canada thematic and broadly the North American lithium triangle, which we have argued, Rodney, for a long time, being Quebec, Ontario, Carolina, hard rock, has very much become prominent within, a sub theme within the, lithium, broad lithium theme, in contrast to, the DLE, Argentina, and other segments of the lithium market have had greater days in the sun. All those stories are still good and fine, but there definitely seems to be a bias and a preference, for hard rock. That said, the big news since we last were talking with each other is GM and Lithium Americas. I want to congratulate my friends at LAC and GM, actually, for being so proactive and creative here. And we just had news overnight that Judge Du basically is saying the record of decision is okay, but she did kick it back to the Bureau of Land Management. Lithium Americas put out a press release today saying that the construction timeline is still on target. It's not going to be affected by what seems almost a technicality. So it may not be a done deal, but I believe the probability is very high. I believe Mary Barra and GM are very politically astute. I believe behind the scenes, there have definitely been some lobbying or talks and assent. So I don't think it's a coincidence that just 1 week after GM comes in, Judge Due, well, who knows? But LAC combined with Ioneer getting a $700 million loan, combined with Piedmont restructuring their deal with Tesla, has been, a rich 5 weeks of news of these American companies with strategic partners and government funders. Did Tesla miss a trick here, right? Because I wrote in 2020, in the midst of COVID in May, one of my most popular newsletters was, which lithium company might Tesla buy? And I put together all the arguments why it might be Lithium Americas. And here they are, GM, who most Tesla people think is going to go bankrupt, has, stolen a march here with, in my mind, it's very critically important because GM is becoming a miner here, right? That they are going to own equity in a company that mines, not just processes. And before they were just focusing on kind of like processing. So here you have a traditional auto OEM like Ford back in the day in the 1920s, and we predicted this would happen. What do you think of that? And where's Tesla? Like, what's going on? What's going to happen now?
Yeah, look, I think that's an interesting question, Howard, because if Tesla has a genuine ambition to compound at 50% sales going forward, and the Cybertruck will become part of that mix later in this year, supposedly, but that's more of an American play. Then, based on our research and discussions we've had, it's unlikely that they've got that amount hedged. Certainly, even by 2025, I think they come up light. So encouraging that they are going to do their own hydroxide plant, encouraging that they're going to get feedstock from Piedmont, and no doubt will do other deals, but scaling that's going to not be overnight. So fundamentally, they still need to get their material from third parties. That's unavoidable. And if you look at that, and if you look at likely the contract signed by incumbents and where they're at, there isn't much left. Now, is GM stealing a march in them because they've done that deal with Livent? Now they've done this deal. Ford's done the deal with Liontown. Where is this leaving Tesla now? So I think, other than maybe CATL having a trick up its sleeve and mining in Africa or what have you, and possibly supplying cells to Tesla, which I don't know if that necessarily makes commercial sense now that the IRA's got that phenomenal incentive of $35 per kilowatt hour at the cell level and then another 10 at the pack level. So essentially the read-through, how it is, I don't think you can wring any more lithium out of the incumbents, and you've already had Albemarle sort of indicating lower and numbers and some of the other guys not ramping new projects as quickly as possible means they need a developer. And logically, you would think, given that the US is going to be the fastest growing EV market, not by volume, but by growth, that they need a development company. I guess logically, if they want to expand the hydroxide plant beyond that, then they need a spodumene play, or they need an all-in integrated, producer in North America. So that leaves, developers, does that mean Canada? Quite possibly, or hoping that Piedmont gets permitting in North Carolina soon, and possibly, I don't know where Albemarle, who they promised, and then getting some of that material. So to your question, I think Tesla's up against it a little bit now. I don't think that they can get that supply from incumbents, and some of the near-term developers have signed contracts away. That the core deal, if I remember, fell through. between them. So who are they going to sign up with? That's a question.
Yeah, well, GM is focused on LAC now, and LAC is talking about kind of end 2026 production.
I mean, GM's going to scale post 25, so they've got Livent, and now they've got this. So they're really only going to aggressively do it, whereas Tesla's sort of trying to grow at 50% per year every year, and then not have a quantum leap like GM is. So they have more of an urgency, in my opinion.
Yeah, they need it now. They are getting it from the incumbents to a degree, but Albemarle has rejiggered a lot of their contracts, and David Deckelbaum at Cowen put out an interesting note on Livent, basically saying he likes that share, thinks it has a lot of upside because he thinks price contracts could be substantially renegotiated in the way that Albemarle did. Tesla has no power, right? They don't own any resource, right? They're wholly dependent on their suppliers, right? And the long-term contracts are being rejiggered, in at much higher prices. I think Joe Lowry put up some statistic. The Japanese price was very low. It was like 12,000 or 14,000 or something, compared to like 60,000, spot. But those Japanese prices, I guess, are Panasonic. I don't know if that's Livent, but those are going to shift.
His tweet was $12 a kilo at the beginning of 22 and $63 a kilo by the end. So the pricing is almost reset to spot, or not far behind spot, as those contracts come through. But again, it depends on who those are and where it is. But if you look at the Albemarle presentation, there's maybe a lag of a quarter or whatever, but a lot of stuff is now going to be aligned much closer to spot.
I took a 1.5 minute snippet from the Tesla earnings call. We've been keeping track of how many times he says lithium in all of these calls. In this call, it was much less. It was like 4 or 5 times. However, Elon and Drew Baglino talked about the impact, to their cost of goods sold of high lithium prices. And, they talked about, to some degree, commodity prices, going down, but not lithium, right? Like overall, the supply chain disruption but lithium remains a main conundrum for Tesla. And that's going to be a problem, for some time to come. And
COGS per unit has increased on a year-over-year basis, driven primarily by 3 factors. First is raw materials and inflation, led by lithium prices, and discussed at length in previous calls.
How much time do you think it takes you to get back to this kind of 36K? Is that something we can hope to see this year, or is that too optimistic?
On the raw materials and inflation side, where lithium is the large driver there, and this was a meaningful source of cost increase for us, we'll have to see where lithium prices go. And, we're not fully exposed to lithium prices, but I think in general, is what we've seen from our forecast here, cost per car of lithium in 2023 will be higher than 2022. So, that's a headwind that would have to be overcome to return back to those levels. I don't think we'll get there this year, but I think we'll make progress. And we'll continue to find ways to offset these raw material costs that we don't have control over.
Look at where lithium prices are at. You look at the forward curve, you hear people speaking. I don't understand. Look at, critical elements that has now got the permitting and is in discussions about people haggling about what they're going to pay to buy into that project to secure offtake, when your spot price is whatever, $65,000 a ton. So what if you were to pay X for a stake in that, or Sinovac or whatever? And I'm using that as an example because it's funded, it's permitted and ready to go. Explain to me, if you can get long-term spodumene at whatever it is, 1,000 or 1,500 or whatever, paying up whatever you do, or whatever number you do, that then you could put a tolling margin on that and work out what your lithium's at. And you're likely to be, I don't know, and I'm taking it off the top of my head, but you're definitely going to be sub $20,000 a ton. Why in God's name is someone not stepping up and buying? into that. That's permitted. That's ready to go. You just got to put the check in. You know, everyone has had a bit of a poo-poo about, you know, where is GM, and they don't really sell that many or whatever, but they are making moves to be a meaningful player by 2030.
Ford, it's interesting. You saw Stellantis wrote a check into Vulcan, like 50 million euro. You now see GM, and you had Ford with Liontown. You know, eventually will write a 300 million Aussie check. Those are like the big three U.S. automakers, right? You know, where are the Europeans? Where are the Japanese? Where are the Koreans with checks? Like the U.S. is moving.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's the interesting part, you know, with the cell manufacturers and the South Koreans. So we'll have to see. But I'm saying the economics seems to make sense. Are these guys, you know, you know, pushing? Are they the new frontier to now be buying into lithium projects and becoming miners? Is this going to now, is that what it takes? Does that now separate you from the rest of the pack, that you're prepared to do that and now go and secure your material?
No, I hope so. We thought big oil might come in, and big oil is making like kind of record profits. It's like eye popping. I think, you know, 25, 40 billion, you know, annual profit, right? But they're buying back shares, they're doing dividends, and there's a dichotomy between like Exxon, you know, Shell, I think, and BP are basically saying our renewables investments are low return. So I'm not sure how keen. We'll see if big oil kind of comes in here. Like you've had Coke come in, you know, on the direct lithium extraction, you know, type of thing. But I'm not convinced that the oil companies are going to come in and be the players. You know, where's Rio Tinto? You know, and BHP into some hard rock. There's been some speculation that MinRes might come on the share register to Patriot. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I must say, I would have thought that MinRes would, you know, there are a lot of hard rock projects popping up in Western Australia. I would have thought, I mean, I understand, I guess, or maybe I don't understand, you know, how tight labor is, or is there a limitation to how much MinRes under Chris Ellison can actually mine in Western Australia? Is there a shortage of equipment, staff, whatever, that maybe he needs to look abroad to do it? I think if you want to get into the North American market and the IRA, then, you know, we've seen Australian miners, you know, the Cam and guys, you know, the Primera, whatever, Cam Henry and them, and Green Tech and so on. You've got you know, Chris Evans in Winsome, and the guys in Patriot or whatever are Australian. You know, is MinRes going to follow the Australians getting involved there? I guess they all know each other.
Yeah, I'm not convinced. As a shareholder in MinRes, and a big believer, he doesn't overpay, and I think this thing has kind of run a lot. Patriot, I think it's a great asset, and I just think he's more likely to partner with the next one. And almost everything that he has is in the Western Australian backyard. I think he has a very small stake in some Canadian asset, but for him to kind of go big into Quebec, it's not everything he does comes from the mine service and contracting first. And I don't see him doing mine service contracting, you know, in Quebec, like just building that from scratch. There may be tight labor in Western Australia, but he knows that market. There's tight labor in Quebec also, and dealing with the French cultural differences. I think it would be. I'm not convinced. And if he were to do something more in Quebec, I just think it would be earlier stage. I think this Global Lithium thing is much more investment in that, much more up his sweet spot.
For sure, that is likely to anchor something. My guess is he definitely has an ambition to do the mining contracting. I think just on the Canadian thing, you know, I don't know the rumor mill there, but having chatted to guys at the Benchmark conference and looking at it in that James Bay area, it's a highly prospective region, and the guys said they expect consolidation there. So, you know, we've seen critical elements go through. We've seen James Bay get the government approval. Now they need, is that right? Provincial? No,
They got
approval?
one of the two, but they need the other. And we knew it took 15 months or so with critical elements. So hopefully it won't take as long for James Bay, but you can get things permitted in Quebec. Nemaska's permitted. And
I guess that's my point, is we need to see, in the same way that GM going in with LAC, and hopefully that encourages or whatever. The stumbling block here in North America, I think now that the IRA, people can see you get the subsidies for local content and so on, and you're getting these decent tax credits and breaks and input costs and what have you, is now is the time. I think that the message of you need to permit is now landing in both Canada and in the States. And then the other thing that they have, which is great in Canada, is flow-through financing, which really is very supportive of exploration. So, you know, you can essentially almost raise, you know, your equity at double the price and really give it a go at the exploration level. So it's a highly prospective region. I don't know to what extent they can build out a downstream chemical conversion process. I think that can happen in the States. And we'll see who wants to play in it. As you say, I mean, it's an interesting one. Would it be Australians getting involved, you know, in Canada? I don't know.
Someone late last year, early this year, like we were just talking with some friends, and they're like, oh, you know, all the high grade brines in Argentina are taken, so you have to go after low grade brines, you know, with using DLE to make them economic, like, or in the US, or you know, there's lots of clay. There's, I don't know, again, Peter Epstein, I think, is keeping track of 40 different clay opportunities. But the reality is, lithium is everywhere, right? Theoretically, it's not rare. There hasn't been a lot of exploration in a lot of different locations for, you know, spodumene deposits. So if you could find more world-class deposits, like Liontown a couple of years ago, Kidman a couple of years before that, you know, now Patriot, you know, Winsome, like, why wouldn't you want to, like, be discovering, you know, new world-class deposits in tier 1 jurisdictions, and you could bring those things on to market a lot faster. I mean, Lithium Americas in Cauchari-Olaroz was fully funded, okay, in January of 2017 with Ganfeng and Bangchek, okay? It's now 6 years later, and they're going to have first production later this year, and it's not going to be battery grade. So, like, and that's the only new brine coming on stream after, you know, Allchem, you know, and Livent hasn't expanded, right? Other than SQM aggressively ramping up, and nobody thought that they could, you know, in 2018, that they would be able to get to 150,000 tons, you know, before 2025. They actually did it. In your models, you said you think that maybe they can get to 220. But beyond that, you know, it's going to be a tough, you know, road to hoe. But I just think that the speed with which spodumene moves and can be brought to market, and you've said it before, there's lots of Chinese conversion capacity. Like, as a, you know, no one's really talking about life cycle assessments and carbon footprint, you know, too much in the last kind of 6 or 9 months. You know, the talk is about DSO going to China, like the dirtiest way to, like, get lithium units. Everyone's kind of like seem to have forgotten, you know, this. Clearly, we need conversion capacity. Tesla's building it locally, but you know, we've placed a lot of our business and our bets on, you know, hard rock in Canada, you know, in Western Australia, in Africa, in the United States. And I think that's kind of, you know, in Brazil, you know, and there should be more Sigmas, you know, coming out of there, I think. Anyway.
Look, we've seen a lot of new listings with guys who, whatever, neurology, whatever you want to call it, near these new successes, and the truth is there may well be quite a few new successes coming from those, because you can see the anomalies continue and what have you. And I wrote about it, I think, in 2018 or 19, where I essentially showed all the world's largest hard rock deposits, and they've all spoken for. And I said, you know, I guess 50 million plus deposits would be, you know, the future, where that would fill the gap. Some guys think it can be even less. I mean, if it's going to be DMS, you can certainly get up and running and make it very profitable with less. So we're going to see those.